Imagine you are standing in a freezing cave, surrounded by absolute darkness. Your breath turns to mist in the cold air. In your arms, you are holding someone you love, but they are no longer breathing. You are a primitive human living hundreds of thousands of years ago. Survival is a daily battle against predators, starvation, and the brutal cold. So, what do you do next? Logic says you should leave the body and run. You need to save your energy. You need to survive. But you don't. Instead, you do something that defies all animal instinct, something that scientists are still struggling to explain today. For a very long time, we thought early humans were just highly intelligent animals. We imagined them as savage brutes focused entirely on eating, hunting, and staying alive. The idea that they could feel deep sadness or wonder what happens after death seemed absolutely impossible. But deep underground, hidden in ancient rock and dirt, lay a secret that would shatter everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. In 1992, researchers in Spain crawled through a tiny dark tunnel deep inside a mountain. It is a place known today as the Pit of Bones. At the bottom of a 40-foot drop, they found the remains of nearly 30 ancient humans. These were not our direct ancestors. They were a much older primitive species, living nearly 500,000 years ago. But something even stranger emerged from the dirt. Mixed in with the ancient bones was a single beautifully carved hand axe made of rare red stone. It had never been used to cut meat or chop wood. It was placed there on purpose. Scientists realized this wasn't just an accident. These early humans had carried their dead through the pitch-black cave, dropped them into the pit, and then threw in a precious, perfectly made tool. It was the first known funeral in history. But why give a valuable tool to someone who can no longer use it? Researchers began to realize that early humans were doing things that made no sense for basic survival. In South Africa, another discovery pushed this mystery even further. Deep inside a cave system with tunnels so narrow that only the thinnest scientists could squeeze through, they found a hidden chamber. Inside this room were the bones of another ancient human species called Homo naledi. To get to this room, these small-brained creatures had to crawl through terrifying darkness, risking their own lives just to place their dead friends in a specific spot. There was no food down there. There was no light. They were facing deadly danger just to hide the bodies. Scientists later discovered this behavior was only the beginning. Fast forward a few 100,000 years to a frozen plain in Russia, near a place called Sungir. In 1955, archaeologists dug up graves that left them completely speechless. Inside were a man and 2 children. But they weren't just buried. They were covered from head to toe in more than 10,000 beads made from the tusks of woolly mammoths. Think about what this means for a moment. To carve just one of these tiny ivory beads takes an hour of hard work. 10,000 beads equals 10,000 hours. That is more than a year of non-stop exhausting labor. In a harsh Ice Age world where every single minute was spent searching for food to avoid freezing to death, an entire tribe stopped everything they were doing. They spent months making beautiful jewelry for children who were already gone. However, that wasn't the biggest surprise. Death was changing from a practical problem into something incredibly emotional. In a cave in Iraq called Shanidar, archaeologists found a Neanderthal skeleton buried in the dirt. When they tested the soil immediately surrounding the bones, they discovered massive amounts of ancient pollen. The pollen came from brightly colored flowers like yarrow and cornflower. The evidence painted a heartbreaking picture. It suggested that someone had walked out into the wild, gathered bunches of beautiful healing flowers, and laid them perfectly around the body of their fallen friend. These supposedly savage cavemen were feeling intense, overwhelming grief. The real answer to what was happening inside their minds is far more unexpected. About 12,000 years ago, in a region near modern-day Israel, an older woman was buried. Her grave was unlike anything seen before. She wasn't placed in the dirt alone. Her hand was carefully rested on a tiny, curled-up skeleton. It was a puppy. Evolutionary psychologists believe this moment is a massive turning point in human history. Early humans weren't just burying bodies to hide them from lions and wolves anymore. They were packing suitcases for a journey. By burying someone with a red hand axe, thousands of mammoth beads, or a beloved pet, they were showing a brand new superpower: imagination. They imagined a world beyond what they could see with their own eyes, a world where a dead person still needed tools, still liked jewelry, and still loved their dog. When we look back at the dark caves and frozen graves of our ancestors, it is easy to focus only on the bones. But the bones do not tell the real story. The true story is the red axe, the ivory beads, the wildflowers, and the puppy. For millions of years, creatures have lived and died on this planet, leaving their bodies exactly wherever they fell. But one day, a primitive human looked down at someone they deeply loved and decided that death was not the end. They chose to remember. They chose to hope. And in that very moment, surrounded by cold dirt and crushing darkness, they didn't just invent the funeral. They invented what it means to be human.